I signed the papers. My hand was steady, even though I knew exactly what Michael and his son were trying to do. The fountain pen felt heavy between my fingers as I scrawled my signature across the bottom of page 12. Michael was watching me from across his mahogany desk, trying to keep his expression neutral, but I caught the flash of satisfaction in his eyes. He thought he'd won. He thought I was just a trusting old fool who'd sign anything his best friend of 35 years put in front of him. He was wrong. Let me back up. My name is Robert Morrison, and I'm 67 years old. 35 years ago, Michael Preston and I started a software company in my garage in Palo Alto. We called it Apex Solutions. We were young, ambitious, broke, and we believed we could change the world. Michael handled sales and business development. I handled the technical side and product development. We were the perfect team. More than partners, we became brothers. Our families vacationed together. I was the best man at his second wedding. He was there when my wife died 8 years ago, bringing me meals every day for months because he knew I'd forget to eat. That's why this hurt so much. Apex Solutions grew beyond our wildest dreams. By 2010, we had 200 employees and contracts with Fortune 500 companies. We took the company public in 2015. Michael became CEO. I stayed on as Chief Technology Officer until I retired 3 years ago at 64. I kept my shares, though, 45% of the company. Michael held 40%. The remaining 15% was split among early employees and public shareholders. Last month, everything changed. Global Tech Corporation, one of the biggest technology conglomerates in the world, made an offer to acquire Apex Solutions, $400 million. My 45% stake would be worth $180 million. Michael's 40% would net him $160 million. It was the kind of money that would set up our families for generations. But apparently, $160 million wasn't enough for Michael. It started small, things I almost didn't notice. Michael began having board meetings without inviting me. When I asked about it, he said they were just routine operational discussions, nothing I needed to worry about in retirement. Then his son, Kevin, who'd become CFO 2 years ago, started calling me with questions about old contracts and company history. Nothing suspicious on the surface, but the questions felt off, like he was looking for something. The real warning came from an unexpected source. Janet Holloway, our head of legal for the past 15 years, called me on a Tuesday afternoon. We'd always had a good relationship. She was competent, honest, and didn't play political games. "Robert," she said, her voice tight, "I need to talk to you about something. Not here at the office. Can you meet me?" We met at a coffee shop in Mountain View, far from our offices in San Jose. Janet looked nervous, constantly glancing around like she expected someone to be watching. "I probably shouldn't be telling you this," she said, stirring her coffee without drinking it. "But Michael and Kevin have been working with outside counsel on some documents. They've been very secretive about it, keeping me out of the loop, which is unusual for a deal this size." "What kind of documents?" I asked. "I don't know exactly, but I overheard Kevin on a phone call. He mentioned something about dilution and getting Robert down to minority stake before the acquisition closes. I thought you should know." Dilution. The word hit me like a punch to the gut. They were planning to issue new shares, which would reduce my percentage ownership. If they could get me below 40% before the global tech deal closed, they could push through decisions without my approval. They could even structure the sale in a way that disadvantaged my shares while benefiting theirs. "Are you sure?" I asked, even though I could see in Janet's eyes that she was. "I wouldn't be here if I wasn't," she said. "Robert, I've worked with you and Michael for 15 years. What he's planning, it's not right. You built this company together." I thanked Janet and told her to be careful. Then I sat in my car in that parking lot for an hour, trying to process what I'd learned. My best friend of 35 years was planning to betray me, to steal what I'd built, and he was using his own son to do it. The anger came later. First, there was just emptiness, a hollow feeling in my chest, where trust used to be. But I didn't have time for grief. I needed a plan. I called my attorney, David Chen. I'd known David for 20 years, and I trusted him completely. I explained the situation, and he was silent for a long moment. Robert, if what you're saying is true, this could constitute fraud, David said. But we need proof. We need to catch them in the act. What do you suggest? Play along, David said. If they think you're oblivious, they'll make their move. When they do, we'll be ready. Over the next week, I did exactly that. I played the role of the trusting old friend, the retired founder who just wanted to enjoy his golden years. When Michael invited me to lunch, I went. We talked about the old days, about the acquisition, about how this was the culmination of everything we'd built together. He looked me right in the eye and smiled. And I smiled back, even though I wanted to flip the table. Meanwhile, David was working behind the scenes. He connected me with a forensic accountant named Lisa Wu, who specialized in corporate fraud. I gave her access to my shareholder documents, and she started digging. Within 3 days, she found something. They've been setting up a new subsidiary, Lisa explained over a secure video call. Apex International Holdings. On paper, it's for expanding into overseas markets. But look at the ownership structure. She shared her screen. The subsidiary had been capitalized with a $50 million investment, allegedly from Michael's personal funds. But the company charter gave the subsidiary the right to issue new Apex Solutions shares in exchange for the investment. Shares that would come out of a new pool, diluting all existing shareholders. But the charter had a special provision. Existing officers, meaning Michael and Kevin as CEO and CFO, would receive preferential anti-dilution rights. It was sophisticated. It was almost legal. And it would absolutely screw me over. If this goes through, Lisa said, your stake drops from 45% to about 32%. You lose majority blocking rights. And when the global tech acquisition happens, the way this is structured, your payout would be reduced by about $60 million. $60 million that would instead go to Michael and Kevin. Can we stop it? I asked. The board vote is scheduled for next Friday, Lisa said. If you can prove they deliberately structured this to defraud you, yes, but you need evidence of intent. You need them to admit what they're doing. That's when I came up with the plan. I called Michael the next morning. Hey, brother, I said, using the term we'd called each other for decades. It tasted like ash in my mouth. I've been thinking about the acquisition. I want to make sure all our paperwork is in order. Can we meet and go through everything? I just want to understand all the details. I could practically hear him salivating through the phone. Of course, Robert, he said. Actually, perfect timing. I have some routine documents that need your signature anyway. Just quarterly compliance stuff. You know how it is. Why don't you come by the office Thursday afternoon? We can review everything together? Thursday, 2 days before the board vote. Sounds good, I said. I trust you, Michael. I know you've always had my back. There was just the briefest pause on his end. Always, Robert. We're family. I spent the next 2 days preparing. David helped me set up a recording device, a tiny camera hidden in my watch. It was legal in California to record conversations as long as one party consented, and I was definitely consenting. Lisa briefed me on exactly what questions to ask, what admissions we needed, and I practiced. I practiced looking confused, looking trusting, looking like a man who'd never suspect his closest friend would betray him. Thursday afternoon, I drove to the Apex Solutions building. It was a beautiful modern structure, all glass and steel, in the heart of San Jose. I'd been here 1,000 times, but today it felt different, foreign, like I was walking into enemy territory. Michael's executive assistant, Sharon, greeted me warmly. Mr. Morrison, so good to see you. Mr. Preston is expecting you. She walked me to Michael's corner office. He stood up from behind his desk, that familiar smile on his face, arms open for a hug. We'd hugged 1,000 times over the years. This time, I had to force myself not to pull away. Robert, come in, come in. He gestured to the leather chairs by his window. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water? I'm fine, I said, settling into the chair. On his desk, I could see a stack of documents, easily 50 pages thick. So, Michael said, sitting across from me, I thought we'd start with the acquisition timeline. Then, I've got those compliance documents for you to sign, and we can wrap up with any questions you have. Sound good? Sounds perfect. He spent 20 minutes walking me through the global tech acquisition timeline. Nothing I didn't already know. Then Kevin knocked and entered. Michael's son was 38, tall and lean like his father, with the same calculating eyes. "Dad, you wanted me to sit in on this?" Kevin said. "Yes, come in. Robert, you remember Kevin, our CFO." I shook Kevin's hand, noting how he avoided my eyes. "Now," Michael said, pulling out the stack of documents, "these are just standard quarterly compliance filings. SEC requirements, you know how it is. I need your signature as a major shareholder." He slid the stack across to me with a pen. This was it. This was the moment. I picked up the first page, pretending to read it carefully. It was genuinely just a standard compliance form. So was the second, and the third. They were building my trust, getting me in the rhythm of signing. Then I got to page 12. It looked similar to the others at first glance. Same header, same formatting. But buried in the middle of a paragraph of dense legal language was the clause that would destroy me. Authorization for the issuance of new shares under the Apex International Holdings Agreement. I kept my face neutral as I read it. Then I looked up at Michael. "What's this one?" I asked, pointing to the clause. "Oh, that's just the international expansion we talked about last month," Michael said smoothly. "Remember, the subsidiary for overseas operations? We need shareholder approval for the capitalization structure." Right, I said, nodding slowly. I let my hand hover over the signature line. "And this doesn't affect my stake at all?" This was the moment. The question that would make or break the case. Kevin jumped in before Michael could answer. No effect on your stake. This is just for the subsidiary. Completely separate." "Well, actually," Michael said, and I saw him shoot Kevin a warning look. "There might be some minor dilution, but it's negligible. Less than 1%. And it actually benefits all shareholders because it positions us better for international growth, which will increase overall company value." I let the silence hang for a moment, watching them. Michael was leaning forward slightly. Kevin was fidgeting with his phone. "How minor?" I asked. "Like I said, less than 1%. Michael repeated. He was lying. They both knew it. And now I had it on tape. "Okay," I said. And I signed. I watched Michael's shoulders relax. Kevin actually smiled. They thought they'd won. I signed every remaining page. Standard compliance forms. Nothing problematic. Then I set down the pen. "Thanks for walking me through all this," I said, standing up. "I know I'm retired, but I still like to understand what's going on with our company." "Of course, brother," Michael said, standing to shake my hand. "We're in this together. Always have been, always will be." I left the building, got in my car, and drove 3 blocks before I had to pull over. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from rage. I called David immediately. "I got it," I said. "The whole thing, clear as day." "Good," David said. "Now we move to Phase 2. Phase 2 was the nuclear option. That evening, David filed an emergency motion with the Delaware Court of Chancery, Delaware, where Apex Solutions was incorporated. The motion requested an immediate injunction blocking the board vote scheduled for Friday. We attached the recording, Lisa's forensic accounting report, and a detailed complaint alleging fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and self-dealing. We also sent copies to every board member and to the Global Tech Corporation acquisition team. The proverbial shit hit the fan at approximately 8 p.m. Thursday evening. My phone started ringing. First Kevin, then Michael, then other board members. I didn't answer. I was at David's office, and we were preparing for the next day. The hearing was set for Friday morning, 10 a.m. The judge was Margaret Hawkins, known for being sharp, no-nonsense, and allergic to corporate fraud. I didn't sleep that night. Friday morning, I walked into that courtroom with David by my side. Michael was already there with his legal team, 3 expensive lawyers in expensive suits. He looked at me across the room, and for the first time in 35 years, I saw him clearly. Not as my friend, not as my brother, but as what he really was, A man who'd been willing to betray everything we'd built together for more money he didn't even need. Judge Hawkins took the bench at exactly 10 a.m. "I've reviewed the emergency motion and supporting materials," she said, looking over her glasses at both sides. "This is quite serious. Mr. Chen, please present your case." David stood. He was brilliant. He walked the judge through the timeline, the subsidiary structure, the dilution scheme, and then he played the recording. "My voice? And this doesn't affect my stake at all?" Kevin's voice. "No. No effect on your stake." Michael's voice. "There might be some minor dilution, but it's negligible. Less than 1%. Then David showed the forensic accounting. The real dilution. 13% of my stake, translating to approximately $60 million transferred from my pocket to theirs. "Less than 1%, David said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Your Honor, this is textbook fraud." Michael's lead attorney tried to argue. He claimed the dilution calculations were speculative, that the recording was taken out of context, that Michael had simply made an honest mistake in his estimation. Judge Hawkins shut him down. "Counsel, I've been on this bench for 22 years. I know what fraud looks like." She turned to Michael. "Mr. Preston, did you know the true extent of the dilution when you told Mr. Morrison it was less than 1%? Michael's attorney tried to object, but the judge cut him off. "I'm asking Mr. Preston directly. Answer the question, sir." Michael stood. For a moment, he looked like he might continue the lie. Then his shoulders sagged. "I knew it was more than 1%, he said quietly. "How much more?" "Around 13%. The courtroom was silent. "And you told Mr. Morrison it was less than 1% to induce him to sign?" "Yes." Judge Hawkins' gavel came down like a thunderclap. "Injunction granted. The board vote is blocked. Further, I'm ordering an independent investigation into the Apex International Holdings structure and all related transactions." She looked at Michael with something like disgust. "Mr. Preston, you should consider yourself fortunate that I can only rule on civil matters. If I were the DA, you'd be facing criminal charges." We left the courtroom. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I just felt tired. The fallout was swift and brutal. By Friday afternoon, the story had leaked to the tech press. Apex Solutions founder alleges massive fraud by CEO and CFO, read the headline on TechCrunch. By Monday, Michael and Kevin had both resigned, under pressure from the board. The independent investigation confirmed everything we'd alleged and found even more. They'd been siphoning money through the subsidiary for months, setting up offshore accounts. The SEC got involved. Then the FBI. Global Tech Corporation initially threatened to walk away from the acquisition, but after the board brought in a new CEO and cleaned house, they agreed to proceed, though at a slightly reduced valuation. My 45% stake remained intact. When the deal closed 2 months later, I walked away with $175 million. Michael and Kevin faced criminal charges: wire fraud, securities fraud, breach of fiduciary duty. They both took plea deals. Michael got 3 years in federal prison and had to forfeit the money he'd stolen. Kevin got 2 years. I should have felt satisfied. Justice was served, right? But I kept thinking about that moment in Michael's office when he'd called me brother and looked me in the eye while lying. 35 years of friendship, gone. All for money he didn't need. I've thought a lot about where it all went wrong. Michael and I started with nothing. We built something together, something we were proud of. When did $60 million, on top of the $100 million he was already getting, become more important than our friendship? Than his integrity? I think it was gradual. Small compromises that seemed reasonable at the time. Taking credit for someone else's idea in a meeting. Fudging numbers slightly on a report, each one making the next one easier, until lying to your best friend's face seemed justifiable. The money revealed what was already there. It didn't create his greed. It just gave him the opportunity to act on it. 6 months after the trial, I was in my home in Palo Alto, the same house where we'd started Apex Solutions, in my garage all those years ago. I was going through old photos, and I found one from 1990. Michael and me, young and stupid and broke, standing in front of our first office. We were grinning like idiots, arms around each other's shoulders, believing we could conquer the world. I looked at that photo for a long time. Then I put it in a drawer. Not to forget, but because I needed to remember both sides. The friend he'd been and the man he'd become. I donated $50 million to charity. Set up a foundation focused on teaching ethics in business, particularly to young entrepreneurs. If I could stop even one person from making Michael's choices, from trading their integrity for money they don't need, it would be worth it. People ask me if I regret how it all ended. If I wish I'd just signed the papers and walked away with my $120 million instead of fighting. The answer is no. Not because of the money, though I'm glad I kept what was rightfully mine, but because the moment I signed those papers, I knew I wasn't going to let them win. I wasn't going to be the trusting fool who got played. Some people might say what I did was about revenge. Maybe there was some of that, but mostly it was about something simpler. Standing up for myself when the people I trusted most tried to tear me down. I'm 67 years old now. I built a company from nothing. I made a fortune. I lost my best friend, and I learned that the most valuable thing you own isn't your money or your shares or your house. It's your integrity. The willingness to do the right thing even when it's hard, even when it costs you. Michael chose money over integrity, over friendship, over everything we'd built together. I chose differently, and I sleep just fine at night. The other day, I was cleaning out my office and found that pen. The fountain pen I'd used to sign the papers in Michael's office. I'd kept it without really thinking about why. I held it for a moment, feeling its weight, remembering that afternoon. Then I threw it away. Some things aren't worth keeping. Some betrayals can't be forgiven, shouldn't be forgotten. Not out of bitterness, but as a reminder, a lesson. I gave Michael 35 years of my life. My trust, my friendship, my loyalty. He threw it all away for money that wouldn't have changed his life in any meaningful way. He was already set for life with the $100 million he would have gotten legitimately. But he wanted more. And in wanting more, he lost everything that actually mattered. That's the real tragedy. Not that he went to prison or lost his money, but that he traded something priceless, our friendship, for something that ultimately meant nothing. I think about the young men in that photo sometimes. The ones who believed in each other, who built something from nothing because they trusted each other completely. I mourn those men. They don't exist anymore. But I don't mourn the money Michael tried to steal. That's just numbers in an account. What I mourn is simpler and sadder. I mourn my friend, the one I thought I had. The one who turned out to be an illusion. Some people tell me I should forgive him, that holding on to anger isn't healthy. But I'm not angry anymore. I'm just sad. Sad for what could have been. Sad for the choice he made. Sad for the friend I lost long before I ever walked into that courtroom. The money's gone now anyway. Most of it. Donated to causes I believe in, to helping young entrepreneurs start their journeys without repeating our mistakes. The foundation is my legacy now, teaching people that success without integrity is just another form of failure. Michael gets out of prison next year. I don't know what he'll do, where he'll go. Part of me hopes he's learned something, that he understands what he lost, but I know I'll never speak to him again. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. And I'm okay with that. I'm 67 years old. I've made my peace with how things ended. I did the right thing. I stood up for myself. I refused to be a victim. And in the end, that's all any of us can do.